The purpose of today's presentation really, I think, is three parts. First is to provide just a general overview of Tennessee Achieves. One thing that we really realized since the pandemic is that we've done a good job of telling certain parts of our stories to certain people across the state of Tennessee, but we haven't always told the full story. So it's easy to sort of categorize Tennessee Achieves as just a scholarship or just a mentoring program or a community service organization, but we're a lot of things, and we have a lot of programs that we're really proud of and are making a lot of difference, making a big difference in a lot of communities in Tennessee. So we're going to start off just doing a kind of a brief overview. We'll dig into the Grainger County data. We don't have a ton here, just for the sake of time. We can't go too deep, but we do have a data update in terms of how Grainger County is doing versus the state. And then we'll wrap it up in terms of how I think communities can respond to the drop in the college going rate that we've seen across the state of Tennessee. So we'll go ahead and just get started here. My name is Ben Sterling. I serve as the Senior Director of Content at Tennessee Achieves. I've worked here since June 2014, so I'm in my 7th year working with Tennessee Achieves across the state. I also was a student in this program back in 2009, so I've seen the program from all sides and since its inception, and I'm awfully proud of where it is today. So with that said, Tennessee Achieves launched as Knox Achieves back in 2008 with the high school graduating class of 2009. And ever since, it's grown. So in 2012, we expanded to 14 counties. Grainger happened to be one of those. So we'll be coming up on our 10th cohort of students with the class of 2022 in Grainger County. And since 2009, we've worked with over 440,000 students across Tennessee and recruited over 71,000 volunteer mentors. So as you can see on this map, we serve all the way from one end to the other, from Memphis to Mountain City, as some would say, with some counties that are being served by the Ayers Foundation, but we're working with a significant portion of the state. And as you can tell, we're working in 90 counties. There's 5, like I said, that aren't administered by Tennessee Achieves. But of those 90 counties, 74 of them are rural counties, Grainger being one of those. 35 are considered at risk or distressed by the Department of Community and Economic Development. I think our work is as important in those 35 counties as it is anywhere in the state. And in those 90 counties, we're working with over 600 high schools. That includes all public, private, charter, and homeschools. So we work with every type of school in Tennessee. In terms of the colleges that we partner with, 67 of those. I'd say the ratio at the bottom of this slide is probably no surprise to anybody that most of our students are landing at a community college. I think that's probably for a lot of reasons. One, it's just capacity. It's just a more popular option. There's more room for people. And it's also, we hear from about 75% of our students that say that they plan to transfer to a 4-year university at some point in the future. So going to a community college tends to be the most efficient route for that. I also like to point out this TCAT number, 11%. While it seems small, this is a growing number. When we launched Tennessee Promise with the class of 15, this was 8%. So that number's continued to go up. And I think as TCAT becomes more flexible and has a more diverse offering in terms of when their programs are offered, the types of programs offered, and in the number of communities that they're in, that number will continue to increase. So I'm always an advocate for growing and expanding TCAT reach. So let's talk a little bit more about numbers. In those 90 counties, we work with about 60,000 students annually. When you break that down, it ends up being 89% of all Tennessee high school seniors. And with our team, I think it's kind of hard to wrap our mind around. Almost 90% of the high school seniors in Tennessee get an email from us. It's pretty crazy. You drill that down a little bit further, 78% of all first-time freshmen at community colleges are Tennessee Achieves students. So you can pretty much talk to a student on a community college campus in Tennessee, and you're going to talk to one of our students. And even more impressively, 86% of all graduates from Tennessee community colleges are Tennessee Achieves students. So the impact is great. We are certainly proud of that. I'm going to continue to try to grow that as we move along. In the middle of this slide, you'll see some just basic demographic information. This is statewide, not unique to Grainger County. So keep that in mind. But 56% of our students are deemed eligible for federal financial aid. This is determined by the FAFSA. So when the student completes the free application for federal student aid, they're applying for state and federal aid. And based on their parent income, if they fall below a certain threshold, they're eligible for that federal financial aid, deeming them as a low-income student, if you will. In the middle of this page, you'll see that 40% of our students tell us that they're first-generation college students. This number is really hard to put a finger on. I think everybody has a different definition for what first generation is. This is self-reported by students. And so the way that I see it is, if you are in your direct household, your parents and your siblings, if you're the first person out of those people to go and graduate from college, you're a first generation college student. But I think a lot of our students think if their aunt or their uncle or their cousin went to college, then they're no longer a first generation college student. But in my eyes, they are. And it's a badge of honor that they should be wearing. So I think this number is probably a little higher than 40%. As we talk to students and we explain that to them, they tend to be like, oh yeah, I am first generation. But then this last demographic number here, 51% of our students majoring in the health science or STEM related field. I really like this number. I'm glad we put it on here. We were working with the National Science Board a couple of weeks ago, really talking about first generation students actually, but they asked us to dig into what our students were majoring in. And the fact that over half of our students are in some sort of STEM capacity, I think is really, really valuable. Just based on just the growth in the industry in Tennessee. When you look at where Tennessee, the economy is growing, it's in manufacturing, it's in different types of industry, it's in science, it's in technology, and it's in healthcare. So if we can have our students studying that, I think we're doing our job in terms of equipping our future workforce with the skills to fill those jobs. So anytime I talk to a student, I'm like, go into healthcare, because there are so many jobs. We were at a lunch 2 weeks ago in Chattanooga with Senator Bo Watson, and he said, you can take a dart and throw it at a map of the United States. And if it hits a city, there's a job for you in healthcare. He's like, I want you to stay in Tennessee, but for this example, it could be anywhere in the United States and there's a job. So I think students need to hear that. And as we talk about our mentor program a little bit later on, I think this is somewhere we can really focus our energy. But at the bottom of this page, you'll see just some general costs. Some people tend to find this interesting. The Tennessee Promise Scholarship annual cost is $32 million. This shakes out to be about $1,000 per award for each Tennessee Promise student per semester. And then the tnAchieves Achieves annual budget, $2.5 million. This pays for things like my salary, our building, our technology, and then trying to travel reimbursement, programmatic type things, not scholarship dollars. So let's talk about what tnAchieves Achieves does. On this page, you'll see a variety of programs, Tennessee Promise being on the left. And obviously the Tennessee Promise Scholarship is sort of the backbone of the work that we do. Without that, we don't reach 60,000 students every year. We don't get all those applicants. We don't receive their information. So it's certainly a major part of the work that we do, because it's what brings them to us. If you're unfamiliar, the Tennessee Promise is a scholarship that allows any student to attend community and technical college tuition free. So when a student and a family hears free college, their ears perk up. And the fact that it's a 5-minute application, they get it in, which is great. But then once they get into our program, I think what students and families often find, it's these other programs and other resources that tend to be the most important. The first one of those that they come into contact with is our volunteer mentor program. We'll talk a lot more about that at the end of this program, but the volunteer mentor program, I think, is the glue that holds all of this together. It's the group of people in a community that are coming together to ensure that their seniors have a support system. The community service aspect to our program is something that's been involved. We've been involved with that since we launched back in 2008. Really focused, because one of our founding board members, Randy Boyd, if you're familiar with him, he's an Eagle Scout, very much passionate about the value of community service, and saw that if a student's going to get a semester's worth of college paid for, the least they can do is give back a day of work. So 8 hours of community service every semester. I think for a lot of our students, when they see this or hear about it, they're like, oh my goodness, I have to do community service. But then we survey them on the back end, and 96% of them are thankful they did it. So that to me says it's worth hanging on to. And for me, what I end up seeing from students is that it exposes them to needs in their community that they're not aware of before. Although it does force them to do it, they're better for it on the back end. So it is worth it. Our summer programs are something that we constantly innovate and improve. The Summer Bridge program is a 3-week program that is aimed at students who have scored below a 19 on their ACT. For 3 weeks, they take English, reading, and math, and they have an opportunity to test out of learning support classes or remediation in their first semester of college. The Summer Institute is like the Summer Bridge program times 100. It's a 6-week credit-bearing program. We've only hosted it in Memphis so far, 3 years in a row. And so students that are successful in the Summer Institute enter college in the fall with 9 credit hours, and they eliminate the need for remediation. The challenge for this program, really scaling it, growing it, is just the transportation challenge. Having a student on campus every day, and it was a 10-week program. We scaled it back to 6 weeks this year because of the pandemic. So originally it was 10 weeks. Getting a student to a campus for 10 weeks is hard when they have to drive themselves there. But the program that we host in Memphis is in a neighborhood, and most students can actually walk or take public transportation to get to campus. So it's not as much of a challenge there as it would be, in a more rural part of our state where there's a long drive ahead of a lot of students. So the Summer Institute is something that we're looking to grow and expand. Obviously, we've tried to do it in Nashville and Knoxville the last 2 years, and just student interest hasn't been there. But we're going to continue to try, because I think the fact that we have a 100% success rate in that program, and 29 students are starting in the fall, 9 credit hours ahead, it's a huge win. So going to keep trying. Complete is our coaching model that we launched with the class of 2019. This is really something that I think is innovative. It's taken our work an entire step further. It grew our team, doubled our team. We went from 15 to 30 because of Complete. And it's really an idea where we have a staff person who sort of carries the torch that the mentor lights and carries it all the way to the end for the student that when they graduate from college. So they start working with their students right now as they start college, and they connect with them every month. So a coach has a cohort of students that they're assigned to based on community college service area, and they are connecting with them over phone, text message, phone call, email, and they have a certain percentage that they're tasked with reaching every month. So we track that in real time on our in our Salesforce platform. And we're seeing some really great success from this. Students that are participating in Complete are indicated by their family income. We, through our research, realized that students from a low-income background are significantly more likely to drop out versus their non-low-income peers. You can look at all of the different indicators, demographics, and income tends to be the most significant, has the most significant effect on their success in college. So we're pairing them with low-income students for that reason. And we're seeing some really nice numbers on that. So let's move forward. So let's talk about some data. Looking at these two tables, we've got the FAFSA file rate and community service. FAFSA file rate obviously being the completion of the free application for federal student aid. We see this as a really important step in a student's college journey. In Tennessee, you have to do this really to go to college. It's the application for all state and federal aid. We see it as the first step. So if a student's doing this, they're at least taking an active step beyond the Tennessee Promise application towards college in the fall. And so we're a national leader in Tennessee in terms of FAFSA file rate annually. We were first for the first 5 years of Tennessee Promise, and then Louisiana passed a graduation requirement. So they have to file the FAFSA to graduate high school. So they passed us in terms of the percentage of students. So we're second right now, which is not where we like to be in Tennessee. So we're going to see what we can do about that. But our statewide average last year with the class of 2021 was 86%. Grainger County right there near the average. I think anytime you see this is an outlier for Grainger County. Normally Grainger County is at 100%. And I think just the pandemic year had an effect on a lot of communities in a lot of different ways. And this is, I think, one of those things that was affected in Grainger County was FAFSA filing. Have no doubts this will be back to 100% with the 2022 class. Community service. Students in Grainger County have completed almost 16,000 hours of community service. I would argue, I'd say Donna probably knows this well, a lot of organizations in the county have really benefited from this in terms of having students from the high school volunteering with them. So I always take this as a time to plug. If you need volunteers, please let us know. We can share that with students. We have an ability to just email students from Grainger or students just from a certain part of the county. We can drill it down pretty narrow. So we're happy to do that and get that word out if you need volunteers. I know the Strawberry Festival's or the Tomato Festival's already passed, but I know they probably volunteer there if I had to guess. And then across the state, we've had 3.3 million hours of community service hours completed. Randy Boyd, when he talks about our program, he says we're the largest community service organization in the state. Not sure if that's true, but it feels right. So we're going to go with it. All right, so let's talk about progress, student progress. I think you'll be delighted to see this. So to sort of lay this out for you in terms of the lines on your screen, Tennessee Promise applicants, that's from the class of 2021. The two middle rows, students enrolled in first year retention, that's the class of 2019. And then the 3-year graduation rate, that's the class of 2017. So You'll see 263 students applied from the 2 high schools in the county. You've got 97 students that enrolled with Tennessee Promise. 71% of those returned for their second year, outpacing the state average by 4 percentage points. Huge. I think that's really big. And then to see this 3-year graduation rate, this is in the top 5 in the state. It's hard to explain why that's that way, but I think it's incredible to see. And I think even more, normally when you see these really high retention rates and these really high graduation rates, it's in a county where you've got at least one college campus, whether that's a main college campus or an extension campus or a TCAT. But in Grainger, there's not any of those. So that means that these students are having to leave the county to go to school and come home every day. And they're still outpacing their peers by a lot in 3-year graduation. So to me, that's a huge win. Says a lot about the students' grit and their commitment to success. And I would say that, in my opinion, that Grainger County is going to be better because of this. So I'm encouraged by that. I'm going to continue to keep my eye on it, especially next year when we roll out our 6-year graduation rates for the class of 15. Really interested to see how that looks. Because you've got a county like Grainger that's outpacing their peers, which is great. So let's zoom out just a bit and talk about our students as a whole statewide. So tnAchieves students are outpacing their peers by 14 percentage points in fall-to-fall retention. And then in terms of 6-year graduation rate, 16 percentage points above their peers. When we compare our students to their peers, really what we're looking for is, are our supports, are our programs making a difference? We look at first-year retention, fall-to-fall retention as our baseline. If a program is affecting that in a positive way, we keep that program. Because what we know is that if a student's returning after their first year, their chances of graduating significantly increase. So we're always trying to affect that retention rate. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see our 3 major programs and how that's affecting our retention rates. So students that participate in one of those summer programs are 34% more likely to retain. Our coached students are 23% more likely to retain. And then our Knox Promise students, which we haven't talked about, are significantly more likely to retain. And these are students that are, in a lot of ways, at-risk students in terms of economic stability. So Knox Promise is similar to Complete. Those students are coached, but what's different is it's paired with emergency funding. We call it completion grants. And so basically what that means is if a student has a financial hurdle that's impacting their ability to succeed in college, we can take care of their financial hurdle with cash through a donation from the Hazen family. The good news, and it's ironic that we rolled this out this week, at the same week that we're doing these advisory council updates, is that we are actually rolling out statewide completion grants this week. So now we've partnered with the General Assembly to collect some funding that we can use for completion grants. So students in Grainger County can now request funding if they need help. There's a little bit of a cap, more of a cap on the statewide completion grants. There's just not as much money as we have for Knox County through a private donation. But I think what we're finding already in 2 days of these being public is that we're making quite the case to grow this even more so that every student will have the opportunity to access this once that funding does run out. We're hearing from students that have just significant challenges. And it's heartbreaking to hear, honestly, and asking for $100 in gas money. And we're like, oh my gosh, I wish I could buy you a new house, right? And it's heartbreaking, but it's also inspiring to see that despite their circumstances, these students still want to go to college and they're reaching out for help, and we're going to do everything we can to push them through. So the completion grants, this is the same thing that we saw with Knox Promise when we launched Knox Promise, is that you just don't realize sometimes how tough it is for your neighbor until they start to ask for help. And you're like, oh, wow, okay, so we need to really focus in on this. This is a problem we didn't see. So excited to see where we can take the work, in my opinion. So all of the good news oftentimes does have a counter argument, right? And the pandemic certainly had its effect on post-secondary in Tennessee. The biggest change and biggest effect that it had was the impact on college going rate across the state. Only 6 counties increased in 2020 or 2021, sorry, with the class of 2020. And so that means there were 89 that declined. And so that's obviously not surprising if you look at the statewide data and the graph. And the disappointing part of this for us is that with the class of 15, you can see this giant jump, 4.6% increase. We sort of held it steady. and then bam, instantly with 1 year went back to where it started. In Grainger County, we saw a small decline, 5 percentage points, about the same. But it's kind of on par with the way that the state declined. That's not as concerning as it is in some counties declined by like 14 percentage points, just huge. And so even a 5% decline in my eyes, if it's not growing, to me, it just says it's an all hands on deck situation. It's time to get involved with this. I know those of you listening to this are involved, but I think it's time to tell our neighbors, we need to get our students refocused. Let's refocus on college. We've seen this great data in Grainger County. It's just amazing to see how many students have succeeded in college in the county, and we need to keep that going. So what can we do to change those? Change their eyes and change their minds in terms of what college looks like. I think the best way to do that is to volunteer with our mentoring program. It engages you with students during their senior year. So I think this could make a difference in that college going rate number that's directly influenced by whether or not that high school senior goes to college in the fall. And so as a mentor, you have the opportunity to encourage students to continue to stay on that path and follow through with their plans to go to college through the summer and get them enrolled in the fall. Mentoring with Tennessee Achieves, for those of you on here, I'd say you all are mentors or have mentored at some point or another. It's a low commitment, low time commitment. It's easy, but it's designed to have a high impact in the event that student needs help. They have somebody to do that. For those of you that have mentored for a while, you'd know that in 2019 and before, we had an in-person mentoring experience where you'd meet with your students in person. Grainger County always had pizza because that's just how they are. And so it was a great experience, right? And you got to meet with your students face-to-face. Our 2020 mentor program was completely flipped upside down by the pandemic. We tried to make it virtual. It just was hard, quite frankly, because we didn't have the technology. In 2021, we rolled out Tennessee Achieves Connect, which is an online mentoring platform that I think was wildly successful to have rolled it out in just a matter of months. It was great. Our team did a really good job in terms of getting that together and rolling it out. But it did have its challenges, and it also presented the 100% virtual mentoring that I would argue isn't everybody's favorite. Some people want that in-person interaction. Some people want 100% virtual. So in 2022, we're going to give you the best of both worlds. We're going to keep Tennessee Achieves Connect. So you're going to be able to mentor virtually there, track your students' progress, meet with them virtually on there, chat with them on there. But we're also going to provide some interfaces for you to meet in person with your students. We're going to call these Tennessee Achieves open houses. So instead of it being like your traditional meeting format that you've seen where we mandate that students be there on this day at this time and then you show up and your students are there, we're going to just basically reserve the cafeteria at Grainger High School, and we're going to encourage you to invite your students to meet you there. So we reserve the space, you invite your students to meet you there. And we'll reserve it on a day for 3 or 4 hours, and our team will be there to answer questions, but we're not going to mandate anybody be there for the open house. And then if you can't be there on that day or you're just not interested in that, you can certainly meet with your students independently on your own with them, just as long as it's in a public space. So we're going to encourage you to do that in-person meeting. As of right now, that's what we're at. Should things take an even worse turn, we might change our minds on that, but for now, that's where we are, and we're hopeful that the spring will yield that. So let's move on just a little bit. We need 40 mentors in Grainger County. I think 40 is always an easy number for us to reach. We never fall short of that in Grainger. Always, the community always comes out and supports. But I would certainly encourage you to tell your friends about our mentoring opportunity, because again, I think this year, if there's any year to get involved, it's time to pull ourselves out of the pandemic. And one of the ways that we can do that is being a positive influence on high school seniors as they navigate this process to college. So I would love for you to tell your friends. Mentors can apply. As you can see the link on your screen, tnAchieves.org/mentors. Deadline to apply December 3rd. We've got some time, obviously, but now's the time to start recruiting so that we can get to that 9,000 goal by the end. So what can we be doing? How can we affect and continue to move Tennessee Achieves mission forward? How can we continue to spread the word about going to college? Again, talking about the mentoring program, I think that's the number one way. Obviously, it's an easy way to get involved. But if you aren't interested in mentoring, or if you are a mentor and want to take it a step further, one of the things that you can do is to connect us in your community. So if you know of a group of people with ears, we will come talk to them. If that's a Rotary Club, if that's an Optimist Club, if that's Lions Club, if that's a church group, if it's a school system function, whatever that looks like. If there's a gathering of people and there's a microphone and I can stand on a stage to talk about Tennessee Achieves, I'll do it. The Tomato Festival, get me on the stage, whatever that looks like. I'm happy to come talk about what we're doing, because I think the more ears that hear it, the better, in my opinion. And then the last thing you can do, and this sounds simple, but just tell somebody about Tennessee Promise. Tell a senior, a family of a senior, a parent of a senior, about Tennessee Promise. Remind them to get that application in. It opened on August 1st. Deadline's November 1st. But I'll say this. I've been involved with tnAchieves since the day it started. I was a student in this program. I was involved as a student. I was an ambassador with this program. I was a volunteer, and I'm an employee of the program. My brother did not apply for tnAchieves. He missed the application deadline. So if my brother can miss the application deadline after I got him an extension and laid a paper application on the kitchen table, if he can miss that, somebody in your community can miss it too. And so, and that is a student that is prepared. That's a student with an engaged parent, and it can still happen. So my advice is just tell somebody, remind them, even if you think that they've already done it, just say, hey, did you get your Tennessee Promise application in? If they say no, say, here's my phone, let's do it. tnpromise.gov, it takes 5 minutes. Just get it in so you don't miss it, because there's no extension anymore. So would certainly appreciate that. So that's all that I have in terms of a program. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. My contact information is here, but I'd say most of you guys probably already have that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I've got some time for questions, concerns, comments, anything that you've got. Feel free, fire away, and I'll answer them the best that I can.
And one of the things you said was tell a staff member you'll be a mentor for next year. Go ahead and put me down.
All right, I'll get that.
I'll do my 30-minute thing.
I appreciate it. What do you think about the data? Are you encouraged by that?
I'm very encouraged. I was afraid we would be lower than that. So I'm very, very encouraged, especially since we missed last year. So yeah, very much so. And I'm excited about the open house thing.
Yeah.
Because I really enjoyed seeing those people, you know, and just meeting with them and having a face-to-face that helped me to develop more of a relationship with them. It's been harder when I don't even see those kids, you know. So
totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll be fun.
Yes, I bet one of them. We have we started doing a small business expo in Grainger County, and one of the vendors, her son was a student this year, and she made sure she drug him over to me for him to meet me, and so it was a lot easier for us to communicate because I pictured his face. I knew him. I knew he was very shy, and so I think just that in-person thing is so important for me.
Yeah, I would argue it's the reason why our mentor program has been successful for so many years. Virtual mentoring is hard, especially especially when it was done sort of unasked for, right? It was just like it was just sort of forced because our hand was forced. So we had to do that. And a lot of people were doing it, and it's not what they really wanted to do. So it's harder even then. And then you got students who are just have pandemic fatigue, the word virtual fatigue. So you throw one more virtual thing at them and they're like, no. So,
amen to that. Yes.
So I think having a blended approach will be good. And it'll allow us to approach Tennessee Achieves Connect from a different perspective, where it's not just like this is your virtual mentoring platform. This is your Tennessee Achieves portal. This is what you use to engage with our program. It's not just for virtual mentoring. It's for everything. You can find everything you need Tennessee Achieves wise here on Connect. And I think that'll be different. So yeah, we're excited about that. Our idea in terms of meeting with students this year, normally in a normal year, we go to every high school in October and drop off handbooks and distribute those to every student in the state. And then we have our meeting calendar, as you know, from March to May. But we're going to blend those two together, and we're going to go to every high school from November to February and go in person during the day and do a sign-in process to accomplish that mandatory meeting that they're required to do. And then it'll also force them to set up their Connect account while we're there. So that's our
Good
goal.
idea.
Yeah. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we get to do that. We're, I think, navigating that on a fine line now, but we'll see how that goes.
If Kim is still on, her husband is the principal at Grainger High School.
Oh, really?
So she could probably give us more.
I'm here.
Oh, could Kim? Well, you could probably give a lot more insight as to what's been going on your end, just listening to that husband.
Well, things are getting a little hairy, I think, right now. So I think they were down several students yesterday at the high school. So I'm not sure. I guess it's just a day-to-day thing.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. My wife's involved with Knox County Schools. She's the STEM facilitator for Knox County. And she was at an elementary school yesterday, and they had 10 teachers out.
Yeah. It's just.
So it feels like a spiral a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm optimistic that we'll hopefully this fall it'll smooth out. We'll sort of return back to normal. I hope so.
I do have a question. Mentor. I was a mentor for, I don't know, I think maybe 3 years, and I've been out for 2 years. If I rejoin back in, do I need to do the go back in to the training as a new person, total new person?
If you've mentored within 3 years, no, you'll be fine. We'll do let me see. Let me pull up your file here. See when the last time we have you in here as.
I think maybe 2018 or 19 would have been last year.
Yeah, the only people that we make train as a new person are people that mentored previous to 2016.
Okay.
Oh yeah, no, you're good. You mentored in 18. Yeah, that's fine. So you'll do a 30-minute refresher course. We're going to do our returning training this year will be heavily focused on Connect. We've heard from a lot of people that are returning mentors that just kind of had trouble navigating Connect. So I think the majority of that 20 minutes of that training will just be a tutorial on how to use Connect better. We did that a little bit last year, but we were also new to it, so we didn't really know what to say. So I think this year we know better now what mentors use it for and how to point you in the right direction. But yeah, so if you want me to go ahead and renew your application, I've got it pulled up. I can just make the change now.
That's fine.
Awesome. Thank you. Cool. Well, that's all that I've got, guys. If you don't have any other questions, I really appreciate you for hopping on, and I'll see you in Grainger County soon, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Ben. I may see you at Food City.
That's what I'm saying. I may run into you at the Mexican restaurant.
That's exactly right. Thank you.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye.